Hi everyone, my name is Nimrod Geva and I manage the product group in QuizCon. Today I'm going to talk about one of our solutions called QuizConforms. This is a forms and mobile solution for SharePoint on-premises and online. Now, before I start talking about the features of QuizConforms, I'd like to go over the main challenges that customers face when working with other form tools such as InfoPath, for example. So I think the main challenge is the fact that such tools are designed for power tools. When working with InfoPath, for example, you'll see you have there a complex, feature-rich form designer. This form designer looks a bit more like Visual Studio, looks like a developer tool or power user tool. Obviously, it's not something that business end users can get near to. This means that when working with tools like InfoPath, you need to have a dedicated power user team, InfoPath team. This team needs to implement all the forms required by the organization. So by design, you have a kind of technical bottleneck which is required to implement any form. Other than that, such tools are not really SharePoint tools. These are tools that are external to SharePoint. And this means that they do not support SharePoint extensibility features. For example, let's say you want to add to your InfoPath form a new type of column, a new type of field. You cannot do it. While you can do it in SharePoint you can add custom columns by developing or by buying such columns, custom columns from third-party vendors. In InfoPath, you have a fixed set of controls that you can use. And this is the same with all external designers like InfoPath. And this applies also to any third-party add-on. Let's say you want to purchase from some company a printing add-on or a scanning conversion to PDF, any type of add-on. While it works in SharePoint, it will not work in InfoPath or similar external designers. Another issue is that because external designers like InfoPath generate custom forms which are not really SharePoint forms, you have to separately design these forms to match your portal's look and feel. They do not inherit the SharePoint's look and feel. And finally, most of these form tools are what we call big tools. They are not, they do not cost as like a small add-on. Typically, medium to large businesses will buy a form tool. QuizConforms, in QuizConforms we started with a really different concept. Instead of trying to introduce another external feature-rich designer that replaces the SharePoint forms with our own custom forms, we decided to try and enhance the existing list forms, which means enable customers to keep leveraging their SharePoint investment, and by using the same list forms that all users are used to, allow users to get all the missing form features. So the main benefits or the main guidelines that we kept when we developed QuizConforms are, first of all, we designed it for business users. This is not designed for power users, so you will not find any overwhelming, complex, technical form designer Instead, you will find settings pages where business users can create and configure their forms while staying in the logical level, not going deeper to technical levels. Second key difference between our solution and solutions such as InfoPath is that QuizConforms is 100% SharePoint native. This means that we did not replace the existing list forms, we just enhanced them. This means that every feature that works with SharePoint, every custom add-on that you developed or bought from some vendor will keep working in QuizConforms, because eventually these are the same list forms just on steroids. And another benefit is that you don't have to create new forms now. You already have your list, so you already have your list forms. All you have to do now is configure them to include the additional features that QuizConforms bring with it. And finally, QuizConforms, with QuizConforms we try to target both the medium and large businesses, but at the same time also try to target small organization. So what we did is that we designed QuizConforms to be robust. As a customer, you can buy the QuizConforms product, and it has 3 editions. We're looking now at the Full Trust solution. So we have their Pro and Pro Plus and Enterprise, and each one of them has its features. But in addition, you can just buy the exact requested, the exact required feature. So if, for example, you need only to dynamically show or hide fields according to some logic, you don't need to buy QuizConforms. All you have to do is just buy the field level permissions feature, which is part of QuizConforms. So this way, small customers, or not just small customers, customers who need very specific form features but do not need the entire forms suite, can buy just exactly what they need. Okay, so enough with the boring slides. What I'm going to do now is show you a couple of demos. Now, I did not prepare any fancy, pre-designed, pre-configured, amazing forms. What I'm going to do is quite the opposite. I'm going to show you SharePoint out of the box, and I'm going to show you the real experience when creating new forms or configuring your forms. So you get the feeling of how really this product works. So I'm going to start off with the first example, where I'm going to implement some logic for hiding, disabling, or showing fields according to some business logic. This example I'm going to show you on our Office 365 version, although of course you have this also in the on-premises version. So I have a list called IT Help Desk. Let's have a look at the new item form. Okay, so we have here a bunch of fields. The ones that interest me are the category, hardware type, and software type. So when selecting category, a hardware category, I would like to hide the software type field and show just the hardware type. And when selecting software category, I would like to hide the hardware type and show just the software type. So this is a very common logic of hiding and showing fields upon selection of other field values. So let's do it. So I'm going to the list ribbon, and once you install the QuizConforms app, in this example, you see this ribbon button, QuizConforms. Clicking it will take me to the QuizConforms landing page. This is where I can do all my configuration on this list. So what we need to do is go to the dynamic column permissions. This is the settings page where you can dynamically show, hide, or deactivate fields in your list forms. So let's do it. I want to hide the hardware type field according to the following rule. First of all, I want to hide it in the new item form and in the edit item form. And I want to hide it. And now I need to set a logic condition. So I want to hide it whenever category does not equal hardware, because if it's not hardware, no need to show the hardware type field. And I'm clicking apply. So here we have it under the all rules. We have it in a human readable format which says hide hardware type in these forms when category is not equal to hardware. Same thing I'm gonna do with software type field. So let's create a rule. I want this rule to apply to these forms, and I want to hide this field, and I want to do it when category is not equal to software. So we have two rules. That's it. Let's see how it works. Let's open the list in a new tab. This way I can switch between the tabs. So let's create a new item. Okay, so by default, since category is not equal to hardware and is not equal to software, I don't see any of these fields. When selecting hardware, I will see the hardware type field, and when I select software, I see the software type field and not the hardware type field. So very simple. As you saw, it's all in the logic layer, so you don't need to understand in forms. What you do need is to understand the logic that you wish to implement. Okay, so let's move on to the next demo. Next feature that I'd like to demonstrate is field constraints or field validations. You might say, okay, SharePoint already has validation rules. You can say, I want a field to be mandatory, or if a field is a number, I can validate it and say, yeah, it needs to have a value in some range. What we add here is dynamic validations, and these are validation rules that are conditioned upon some dynamic rule. Also, we have some more advanced validation rules using regular expressions that I will show in a minute. So back to our list. Let's say I'm now not the user that creates support tickets, but the engineer, the support engineer that needs to resolve and close the ticket. So looking at the issue status and the resolution details. So when I want to close an issue, let's say I'm a technician and I just resolve the issue, so I'm changing the value of the issue status field to closed. I want every time a technician closes an issue to provide resolution details. So the obvious solution would be to make the resolution details a mandatory field. But we cannot do it, because if we make this field mandatory, and of course it will be hidden for end users. I didn't do it, but you know that I can hide fields. So when an end user will try to save a new support ticket, he'll get an error because there's a mandatory field that he needs to provide details for. Same goes for even if I'm a support engineer and the status is not closed, it's in progress, so there's more work to do. I do not have the resolution details. If I make the resolution details mandatory, I will not be able to save this item. So what we need here is a dynamic rule which says resolution details should be mandatory, but not always. Only if issue status equals closed. So let's do it. I'm going back to the forms landing page, to the QuizConforms landing page. And if you remember, up until now, we just used the first section, which is dynamic column permissions. I'm going now to the second section here, which is called field constraints. And this settings page is the place where we can create dynamic rules for validating the form fields. So what we want to do is configure the following rule. Resolution details field. This field should not be empty. As you can see, you have many validation operators. So I want this field to be mandatory, so not empty. And if the user if we want to show an error message, this is the default message that we suggest, but you can type here any message that will be displayed to the user if he tries to save the item without typing anything in this field. And I'd like to highlight this field also if there's a validation error. And when do I want to validate that this field is not empty? I want to do it only if issue status equals closed. Only if issue status is closed, only then I want the resolution details field to be validated as mandatory, as not empty. So here we have the rule, again in a human readable format. Let's test this. So I'm editing an existing support ticket, and let's change let's say I just resolved the support ticket, and let's try to save it without providing any details. So you see I get this validation error. Resolution details is a required field. Okay? So, and if of course I provide some details, then I'll be able to save the ticket. Now, another thing that I wanted to show you, if you remember, I mentioned regular expressions. As you can see, we have here many operators. The last one is called matches pattern. When you select matches pattern, you get here many ready to use patterns that we already prepared, and such as date form. You can validate dates or email addresses or IP addresses or phone numbers, postal codes, American zip codes, and so on. Now all these patterns are actually stored in a SharePoint list, and this is a list of regular expressions. Here they are. And this is a bit technical. You can edit these patterns, or you can also create your own new regular expression if you want to validate social security numbers or credit card numbers. Depending on your country, there are different patterns. So all you have to do is create this regular expression. Now, many regular expressions you can find out there on the internet. There are many very good libraries, or if you're technical enough, you can invent or create your own. But most of the job is to copy and just check it before you use it. So this gives you really an absolute control over the pattern, the input pattern of a field. Okay, so next thing I would like to talk about is field groups. Field groups allow us to group fields into sections or tabs. This allows us to display long forms with a lot of fields in a more user-friendly way. Let's go back to our example. Let's just close this settings page. And looking at the new item form, it's not really that long, but still we have here some fields that should be used only by the end users who create the support tickets. And there are some other fields here that should be used only by the support engineers that resolve those tickets. So what I'd like to do now is change this form and make it a multi-tab form. The first tab will be used by the end users, and the second tab will include the fields to be used by the support engineers. So I'm going back to the QuizConforms landing page, and here you can see there's a new section we didn't talk about yet, the field groups / tabs. This settings page allows us to change the layout of the form, make it a multi-column form, multi-tab form, and so on. So let's start off by, before I create any tabs or so, I'd like to make some quick changes. So by default, you can see that SharePoint Forms always display one field per row. So fields are always displayed one above the other, and also the field captions are always displayed near the field. I'd like to change it. I'd like to make my form a multi-column form. So I'm going to change these settings and say I want to display field captions above the fields and to have 2 columns in my form. So in each row, 2 fields should be displayed. Clicking apply, and let's go back to our form and refresh it. Okay, so as you can see now, we have 2 fields per row, and field captions are displayed above their fields. So this was just a really quick setting. Now let's go back to our original task. I'd like to create now 2 groups. One group for end users and the other group for the support engineers. And as you can see now, these groups will be rendered as tabs. Later on I will change it to an accordion display type, so you'll see the differences. Okay, so I'm creating the first group. Let's call it issue details. And now I have here kind of a grid which represents my form. So my form will have 2 columns. I can change it. This number is inherited from these settings above, but I can make each tab have different layout. So, but let's keep it all my forms with 2 columns. And here I have all the fields. By default, the software auto-populates the form with all the fields. Now let's keep only the fields that are relevant to the end users who create the support ticket. So what's the problem? Yes, report date, description, reported by, category, hardware type, and software type. Assign to, I don't need this one. It's not for end users, so I'm just clicking the minus here. Due date, also an issue status. So I can delete this entire row. To delete a row, I just click anywhere inside the cells that compose this row. And now I'm going here to rows and I'm clicking the remove row. And I have also the resolution details row. Also, I don't need this row for end users. So this is my form. Also, what's the problem might be a wide field. So I might want it to capture the entire row. So I can click this cell and say, okay, only this field, I want it to take column span of 2. So take the entire row, okay? And same thing with description. I want it to take an entire row. And you know what? Let's delete the report date row. And I want to add here the report date instead. And yeah, I think we're good. So this is our first group. Let's create another group and call it issue resolution. And here I want to display only the fields that are relevant to support engineers. So actually it's only these 3 last ones. So I'm going to delete all the rows above it. So just selecting a row and clicking remove row. So I'm left with due date, issue status, and resolution details. That's it. Let's see how my form looks like now. So let's refresh it. Okay, so as you can see, we have 2 tabs. One is the issue details that we see now, and you can see the description takes the entire row and rendered as a white field. And this is issue details. Okay, so this was just a quick demonstration of how easy it is to create multi-tab form. And the key principle is that we don't need to drag and drop or do any kind of design. All you need to do is just say which fields you want to be displayed in each row, and if you want a field to capture the entire row or not, the field location will be automatically rendered. So you don't have to deal with pixels or exact locations. Now, as I mentioned before, you can also render the form as accordion. Let's see how it looks like. So clicking apply again. And let's go back to our form and refresh it. So this is the accordion type. So each time you click a section header, it is expanded and the other sections close. Okay, so this is the look and feel. Next feature I'd like to talk about is called quick item navigation. This feature allows you to quickly move between list items while reviewing or updating them. In order to better understand the need, let me show you an example. So I have here a task list, and let's say I need to review my task on a daily or maybe weekly basis, or maybe I'm a team leader and I need to review all my team members' tasks on a weekly basis. So I might end up with having to review quite a lot of items. And when you review a series of tasks, you typically will go one by one in view mode or edit mode, it doesn't matter. So you view the task or edit it if needed. And once you're done, you are redirected back to the list view, and then you go to the next one. You do what you do, and then you go back to the list view. So when you need to go through many items, you spend half the time going back to the list view, and from there going to the next item. In order to accelerate the process of reviewing a series of items, we developed a feature called Quick Item Navigation. Now, just a small remark. What you're seeing now is a virtual machine of a full trust solution. So this is an on-premises deployment, and this is the full trust QuizConforms. Up until now, I showed you the QuizConforms app on Office 365. This is because this feature, item navigation, exists only in the full trust solution for now, but we do plan to add it to the app really soon. So let's click the item navigation settings menu, and all I have to do is just check these two properties and click OK. I will click apply and open again the task list in a new tab. This is easier for me to switch between the screens. So I'm back in the new item in the list view. Let's click the first task, and what you see here is we've added the next and previous links. So when I need to move to the next item, to the next task, no need to close, refresh, go to the list view, and then from there click the next task. All you need to do is click next, and you move quickly to the next item. Same thing works, of course, in edit item form. If you're reviewing a task and you didn't edit it, so when you click next or previous, you'll be redirected immediately to the next or previous task. No need to go through the list view. But even if you made changes, so let's say I did some updates, so you'll see here a caption saying unsaved changes. No need to save. When you click next to move to the next task, you'll be prompted that you have unsaved changes. So if you click OK, they will be saved, and you'll be redirected immediately to the next item. So no need to go back to the list view. So this is a small feature, but end users really feel the effect. It really saves half the time when you're going through a series of list items. Next features I'd like to talk about are the cascaded fields and multi-row forms. Most common example for cascaded fields are the region, country, and city drop-downs or lists, where when you select a region, it filters the countries drop-down, and when you select a country, it filters the cities drop-down. And as for multi-row forms, if you're an InfoPath user, you might be more familiar with the term repeating sections. It's the same thing. It's when you need to update multiple items in a single form. So of course this is not possible with SharePoint out of the box. So I have here an example, and this is another SharePoint site, and this is an on-premises SharePoint. So I'm showing you now the full trust QuizConforms solution. I have here an expense form. Let's create a new expense. So let's give some title, and you see I have the regions. So when I select a region like region 2, it refreshes the countries list, and I see only countries that begin with R2, which stands for region 2. And if I choose region 1, you see here only countries that begin with R1. This is the names that I gave these countries just to make sure that the filtering works correctly. So these are cascaded fields, which are of course a part of QuizConforms. Below you can see the expense details field, which is a repeating rows field. As you can see, it displays multiple rows, and let's report some expenses. So let's say I had a fuel expense. And let's have another expense. Let's say today I had a nice lunch. Okay, and let's, of course I can add more rows or I can delete rows, and let's save this. And as you can see, I have the total of $150 expenses, but I have a validation error. As you can see, there's a validation error for this field, for the cost of the lunch, because lunch cost cannot exceed $15. And as you might imagine, this is because I already created a validation rule, a field validation rule, that checks that if the expense is lunch, then it validates that the cost should not go beyond $15. So that's already a part that I showed you about QuizConforms, the validation rules, the field validation rules. So let's change the expense to, I don't know, $12 and save it. Okay, so it was saved. You can also see the expense details as a column in the list view, and when I hover over it, you can see the expense details very easily. Now, what happens behind the scenes with the repeating rows is that repeating rows is actually a kind of a lookup field. It connects the expense list to another list which holds the details. In our case, it's the expense details list. This list holds the details. So the repeating rows is a lookup that maintains a relation of one-to-many between two lists, allowing you to report many details from the master list. Let me show you how it's configured. It's actually quite easy. So I'm going to the expense list again, and this time I'm going to the list settings. And as you can see, I showed you before, the country is a cascaded lookup, and the expense details is a repeating rows field. Again, both of these fields come with QuizConforms. Let's click the expense details field just to show you how it's configured. So first of all, you need to connect it to a site and a list. And the list doesn't have to be on the same site. It can be on another site. And once you have the list, and you can use dynamic tokens for the list, you select for the site, you select the list. In our case, it's expense details. And then you decide which columns from that list you want to display in the repeating rows grid. So we have all these columns. You can also set summary columns. So for example, if I select the cost column, you can see that I already configured a summary to be displayed below that field. Now, when you create a repeating rows field from the expense list to the expense details list, as we did now, a reverse lookup is automatically created in the details list, pointing to its master. So when you go to the details list and view one of the details there, you will have a lookup pointing you to its master item. You can also configure the amount of empty rows displayed when you create a new expense report. And at the end of the form, you see the preview. You see exactly how it will look like. So it's quite basic. Again, there's nothing technical here needed to create these type of fields. Next subject is external values. External values allow you to retrieve content from external sources and load these values into your form. External values also enable you to update external sources. Actually, external values are web requests. So with QuizConforms, you can create custom external values that retrieve data or update data or both, and use these in your form. You can create custom external values by creating a web request to any web accessible source, any PHP, Java, .NET, it doesn't matter what, page or web service. But the solution QuizConforms also includes some built-in services. So it includes already ready to use web requests to remote SharePoint source or SQL Server, Oracle database, or even Excel files that are stored on a remote web server. Now I'd like to show you an example. I have it here. Okay, so I have here a virtual machine with SQL Server that I will be using in this example. So I have in this SQL Server database, I have a CRM database, and inside I have an inventory table, and it's really a simple table with 3 products, and for each product I have also its available quantities. So it's kind of a product inventory. Now I have an orders list, and let me show you how the new item form looks like. So it's a multi-tab form, and let's go to the order details. And as you can see, you have here a remaining inventory field which is read-only. It looks like a caption, not like a text box. And every time I select a product, it is refreshed and displays the existing amount from the inventory table in the SQL database. So for example, repeating rows column shows 280, which is really the amount here in the database. So let's see how this is implemented. So going again to the QuizConforms settings, I'm going to show you now the field dynamic default value settings. We still didn't cover this one. So dynamic default values, regardless of external values, dynamic default values allow me to load default values into the form fields. These default values can be configured to be manual values. So for example, here I can select any field, and after selecting a field I can also target this default value to certain group or user, and then I can manually type the default value. But another option is to load an external value, and you can also say when you want to load this default value. So by default, default values are loaded when the page loads, but you can also reload the default value when something happens on the page. In our example, when the user selects a product, so when changing other field value. And then once you create this default value, you click the add default value rule, and this way you can create many default value rules. You can see here, for example, let's look at the remaining inventory. We already have a rule that says for the field remaining inventory, you need to load this default value, and it starts with XV. This stands for external value, and it gets the external value called get product inventory, which takes a parameter, the current selected product. Let's edit this default value so you'll see how it was created. So you see, we see here the remaining inventory, and the default value is the external value, which is this external value. Now let's see what it means, this get product inventory. So get product, here you see when I click the picker here, I see all the external values that match this field. So I can use these external values. Now external values actually look like functions. Each has a descriptive name and a return type and some description that the author of this external value provided. So as a user who creates forms, as a non-technical user who knows nothing about connecting to SQL Server and so on, I can easily use such external values like any other value. For me, it's just a function that I have to only to pass maybe a value or a parameter, and a parameter is surrounded by brackets, and typically it would be a column name. In our example, I want to get the inventory of the selected product, and we have a column called product which I want to pass to the function, to this external value, and get the value. Now, and as a user, again, as a user who creates forms, I don't need to know anything beyond this, how to use these external values that are stored in our shared repository. Now let's switch roles, and let's say now we are the more technical users who create these external values. So in order to see how this was really created, I'm going to click this link, which opens the QuizConf external values management page. And this page is accessible only to users who have permission to get to this list. This is actually a list stored in the site collection level. So here you see all the external values created and stored in our site collection. So let's go to the get product inventory. So this is the function. This is the web request. So as I mentioned, every external value is actually a web request. It can be a web request to any source, to any type of page, web service, or whatever. In this case, let's click this link. In this case, we're using one of the built-in services. And when you create or update an external value, you can manually type the URL if you have some custom source of your own, or you can use the built-in services. And once you click each one of these services, it will populate the required URL here. So in this case, we have used the get value from SQL database. So you get this long URL, and what you need to know is just the parameters that need to be populated. So let me take this away from here, and I'm gonna click the SQL database source. So this is what you get when you click it. So as you can see, the first parameter is connection name, and you see it in brackets. Connection name is the connection string name, which should be created in your web config file. And in our case, the name of our connection name is CRM. And then the command. The command is actually the SQL select sentence, which selects the data from the inventory table. So here we have select available quantity from inventory, from the table inventory, and where product ID equals the parameter that we need to pass. And this parameter is passed in runtime. When the user selects a product, the product ID is passed through this parameter to this web request. You can also configure what you expect to get from this external value, and we expect to get a number from this select sentence. And finally, you can also cache this external value. And this is very important. Imagine you have 10 fields with 10 default values, each taken from an external source. This means that every time you load the form, the new item form, 10 web requests will be executed. And this might impact the performance of the form. So if you expect your external value not to be changed so rapidly, let's say this number changes in the SQL Server only once a day, no need to have its real value. It's okay to cache it for half a day or for a few hours. So it's up to you to decide which external value you want to cache and for how long, depending on the nature of your data. So once you create your external values, back to the user view, user just sees this external value as a function. He doesn't need to know anything about the nature of the external source or how to connect to it, how the credentials work. For the end users, it's just a source, it's just a value like any other manual value. Okay, so I think I'm out of time, so I would like just to mention 2 additional features. I won't be demonstrating any of them due to the time limit. First one is called custom actions. These features allows you to add custom ribbon buttons, like you can see here in the screenshot, to the list view or to the edit item page or view item page. And these custom actions actually can do almost anything. You can, when clicking such a button, you can auto-populate field values, you can trigger workflows and redirect to other pages. You can configure permissions or logical conditions for menus. So some people will see some menus depending on values of some fields and other will not. You can display selected tabs. So you can really use it to introduce custom logic and also save a lot of time, because in one click you can do a lot of things that usually with SharePoint out of the box a user has to go through several page refreshes to achieve the same action. And finally, I'd like to mention also QuizCon Mobile, which is part of QuizConforms Enterprise Edition. Now, QuizCon Mobile takes all the features that I've described in this session and exposes them to mobile interfaces. In addition, with QuizCon Mobile, you can create custom mobile pages, which means, unlike other mobile solutions which simply render SharePoint as it is to look better in a mobile device, here you can create custom mobile solutions with the exact buttons, the exact menus, the exact fields. So each user or each role will see the exact things and the exact actions that he needs to see in order to accomplish his task while he's on the road. So, and of course this works without any coding or technical knowledge. With a simple wizard, you can create custom mobile pages that answer the exact needs of your mobile users. That's it. Thank you for attending this session. In case you have any more questions, please feel free to contact me at my email or contact sales@quizcom.com. Also, all the features are available. You can download the product's trial version from our website and check it out for yourself, or you can contact us and we can create a private sandbox for you if you want to check it out on our public sandbox servers.